Well, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depends where you're from. Lovely to see you all online. My name is Liz Hosford, and I'm the chair of the Women's Wellness, which was founded just over a year ago. I have joining me today Damon Johnson, who is the chair of the Men's Wellness. I would like to say our sister um, our sister group, of course. Obviously, I think it would probably be our brother group, definitely. And I'll come to our speaker in just a minute. For those who are new to this webinar, the Women's Wellness, as I said, was founded just over a year ago with the idea of talking about subjects that really are very important to not just transplantees, but those who are associated with transplantation as well, whether it be medics, donor families, family, carers, and nothing is not allowed. So we have got quite a few webinars that have already gone out, and got quite a few that are in the planning as well. As I said, the Men's Wellness, the inaugural Men's Wellness, I think it was last month or the month before, but I'm just going to quickly pass you over to my dear friend Damo, who is more than educated enough to let you know about what's been going on. So Damo, could you give us just a quick rundown of how the Men's Wellness is going?
The men's wellness is going good. So we had our first webinar on mental health back in May. I thought it was the beginning of June, but it was actually the back end of May. And we're working on other things such as like family work balance. And we're discussing other things like sexual health, and we're looking at putting all that into a couple of webinars over the next couple of months.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's lovely to hear. And the women's one is going to be very much based on the same thing. We've had something on pregnancy and adoption. Sexual health is definitely going to be on the list, but there's lots of other things as well. But of course, it's always very nice to work together with the men. And this topic about the transplant transitions from child to adult um, affects men and women. So I had my transplant when I was 19. I was sort of in the middle. And Damon, I know you won't mind me saying that you had your transplant when you were 5. And today we have a very special speaker with us. We have Mary Wu, who is in a very hot and sticky New York at the moment. And instead of going and getting an ice cream from the corner of a New York ice cream seller, she is going to tell us a bit about her story, her transition. And so I'm not going to say too much, but I would just like to pass on to Mary. But before I do, can I extend my thanks to the World Transplant Games Federation and also the National Lottery? Because without those two, this would not happen, and this is an exceptionally important thing for all transplantees. So, without further ado, Mary, welcome. Thank you for your time, and I'm looking very much forward to hearing your story. Mary, over to you.
Thank you so much, Liz. And this is a great audience. Thank you to Damon and the World Transplant Games Federation. It's really an honor to be here and to see all these different faces or names from all over around the world. So, the topic we have here is transplant transitions from child to adulthood. And I'm going to go into my story. But before we get into that, if we could have the next slide, just some food for thought. So, the transplant journey, I feel like to me, what's always been very critical and very special and important to me in my transplant journey is about having conversations, connecting with each other, and ultimately the community just coming together. And these are just some questions, like don't expect any answers or anything, but just food for thought. And then I'm going to lead into, the other slides and other discussion, but just to read these out loud. So some people have had transplants here, some people have not. Some people are caregivers. So just a question, when did your transplant journey begin? How did it start? How do age and life stages impact managing a transplant or transplants, which I'm going to explain why that's plural, potentially plural, and shape our outlook on life milestones? And how about you? What were major transitions for you in the transplant journey? And what are some physical, mental, and emotional implications, impacts? And how about what from your transplant journey have you learned? And can you share with us to connect? Because although this is me certainly sharing about this, this is all about all of us hopefully coming together to converse and connect and all about that community. And what are your thoughts on the transplant community and beyond, or even outside of the transplant? Okay, so next slide. So I'm going to start from childhood. Okay, so my name is Mary. I always introduce myself as ABC, American born Chinese. And the reason I always introduce myself to that is I think because our culture, our upbringing, it has a significant impact on who we are, our part of our identity, and how we go forward in life. I was born a very healthy child, like there wasn't any second guesses or, of what was going on. And then by the time I was 3 years old, I just went straight into end stage renal disease or chronic kidney failure. I had like a spiking hot fever. And I always say that this part of the story is very much my parents and my family story. And they were not born in the US. My dad was born in Shanghai, grew up in Hong Kong. My mother was born and raised in Taiwan. So when you have that background and you don't really have family or connections, certainly no social media at the time, because this was back in the 1980s, my parents really had to navigate so much on their own. And I also think that shows about the family and social impact because it was up to them. The parents were in charge. So the doctors determined, this was back in 1985 or 1984-ish, that I had renal agenesis, which means my kidneys never fully developed. One kidney was shrinking and the other one was deformed. And I was put on peritoneal dialysis right away at 3 years old. I don't remember this time. As I mentioned, parents in charge. And to be honest, I don't really remember my childhood really beginning until I had my first kidney transplant. So the picture up at the top, that's me with 2 nurses. And there were a lot of hospitalizations. There was a lot of like restructuring of the plumbing, if you will. And my first kidney transplant, to me, that's when life began. And I also have an older sister, and it had an impact on the entire family. And I think I would like to think all of us can have experience in some shape or form of another that what we experience, it affects our loved ones too, whether it be from childhood or, moving on. And on January 30th, 1987, I received my first kidney transplant from a deceased donor by the name of Brian. He was in an automobile accident. And his brother, who I actually spoke with actually a few years ago, was telling me about how Brian was 24 years old and was just really starting out life. And it very much is a reality that at that time also living donation was not really a topic at hand, or really brought to light, and plus my parents having to navigate the healthcare system along with the American system as well. Next slide. So I would say adolescence, I think it's a challenging time for all of us. There'd be puberty, all of that stuff. And I don't know about you, but for me, I certainly just wanted to belong. And what happened was I started to develop other health issues. I don't really need to get into the specifics, but there's a lot of physical developmental issues. Like I was limping, and there were a lot of like bone issues, physical limitations. And I still remember at 11 years old, at that point, it was my dad raising my older sister and me. My mom had left. And I remember like just a lot of health issues. I was in and out, and eventually it was my dad who was told that I had 10% function of my first kidney transplant left. And that was a really difficult time. I think just like the emotion, just wanting to belong, just wanting to just be like everybody else. And I was very aware at this point that for me to live, someone had to die. Again, living donation was not really a topic that was spoken about, that was really discussed. Because again, 1990s, different time period. And I was put on the national waiting list in the US. It was February of 1995. And I was scared because I was prepped for hemodialysis and the fistula. Well, I don't know if you can really see it, probably can't, but I was very scared because I was told, oh, you're going to have to go into this dialysis center 3 days a week. You're going to have this machine. It's going to be cleansing, doing the job that your kidneys can't do. And I was just like, whoa. And I think I was just like, life is so unfair. Why am I dealing with this in my and of course, everything is heightened at that age and stage. And I received my second kidney transplant May 5th, 1995. It's been 30 years this year with my second kidney transplant, which is crazy, right? Like time just it does its own thing. And the more you go forward, it's like the faster time goes. But what became very heightened for me after my second kidney transplant. Number one, my dad was taking care of my sister and me on his own. So he actually had relatives come in, like his eldest sister come in to help me with all the medications. There were so many immunosuppressive medications. And those immunosuppressive medications, they definitely cause like weight gain. So you could see in the picture at the top. That I was very overweight. It's the prednisone, it's the steroids, the cyclosporin, another medication just causing facial hair. And this again made me feel just so much more ostracized. And it's very magnified when you're a teenager or preteen. And that bottom picture is when I was waiting for my second kidney transplant. So you could see the difference, I like to think. But I would think the medications just the social place of wanting to belong, just the emotional impact, and the medications causing mood swings. But at the same time, there's this thing called survivor's guilt, which is I felt guilty because my second kidney transplant was May 5th, 1995. She was a 4-year-old girl. And I remember the first thought that came to my mind when my dad told me, hey, you have this, kidney transplant, the second kidney transplant's happening, was I was receiving 2 of her kidneys. And I kept thinking, well, we can live fine with 1 kidney. Somebody else could have that kidney. And why am I alive and somebody else is not here? And it's this guilt factor, it's the emotional factor, but it's also like, hey, I got to pay it forward. I have this new lease on life and I'm going to do everything and anything I can, but it's a balance because it's still the emotional piece too, and certainly the family piece as well. Next slide. So this picture, maybe it's a little funny, but I had to choose this picture because this was taken actually for the 30th anniversary of my second kidney transplant, where I got together with my dad. You could see in the center some childhood buddies, my sister, who's in the top, I think it might, top right corner doing the peace sign. But the big transition in adulthood for me was there were no more kid gloves when I was an adult. When I was in peds, my parents were in charge. And I remember coming armed in with like index cards and asking questions. And I was a minor, so they're not going to speak with me. And when I had to find an adult transplant center and make that transition, they're like, you're an adult, you manage it, you take care of it. All that other adulthood stuff comes into play. In the USA, that could be a whole other topic in itself, health insurances, but it's very challenging navigating the health insurance. You even need to get approved with like certain transplants with certain health insurances, and then just trying to navigate working. So I remember I was told once I start working, like when I started looking for a job outside of college, once I finished college, I was told, don't tell people about, advised, you know, by my family, don't tell people about your transplant stuff because they're going to see it as like a liability because you're going to be dependent on the medical insurance. I was also advised maybe to go into a government job because you go into a government job, they think, oh, it's a stable job. You're going to get all your medical benefits and insurance to cover the ongoing medications or medical appointments and all of that. And this is, I just put this in here slightly, like dating and relationships too, because growing up, I think with my transplant stuff, I kind of always felt like damaged goods. Like, who the heck is going to want to deal with this health stuff? Like, and if this is all related to social stuff, because it's an ongoing situation and to monitor and maintain this gift of life. And even to this day, like I said, 30 years outside my transplant, I still hold my breath when I have to go in for my blood work. I go 4 times a year for my to my transplant center, get the blood work done, review everything, and I still hold my breath. Like maybe my creatinine is it's going up. And there's been other health bumps along the way because of the side effects from the medications. But it's so important to have that support system. But even to this day, it's hard for me to ask for help. It's hard to be human. It's hard to be an adult and just to keep on going. And no kid gloves when you're an adult, I would have to say. Next slide. So, I just want to go back briefly to slide number 2, just to take a glance at those questions again, because would love for us to have a conversation, for us to connect, to hear your story about your transplant journey. Like, how did it begin? All of these questions. What were the major transitions for you? What stood out to you? What about your support system? What about your medical team? Because I don't think we give enough credit to our medical team and navigating that. And also in the US, it's also about certain organ procurement organizations. They have such a vital role in getting the word out about transplantation and supporting and navigating so much. But yeah, so I would love to hear from your transplant journey, what you would love to share. I'm going to go forward again. Sorry, I'm making you go back to the future, back and forth. But okay, so yeah, and for me, I work full time at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. It was very important for me, and I feel really blessed to be able to work because I feel like it's a sign of health. Like, and I knew I wanted to go into healthcare because of my own experiences. And interestingly enough, I'm actually fighting with insurance companies for pediatric patients who have cancer to come to the cancer center. And for me, it's been really important to like pay it forward. There's been legislative days, there's public speaking events. For me, the story, I'm one story out of hundreds and thousands. And for me, it's so important to share about Brian, my first organ donor, and my second organ donor. I call her Little Bean because I don't know her name. She was 4 years old. And I guess also something else I want to bring about is, do you feel defined by your transplant journey? Like, how do we define ourselves outside of the transplant journey as well? Because sometimes we can get so wrapped up in that and everything that's involved from each age and stage and phase. So, like, what do you do for fun or enjoyment or outside of the transplant community? Do you feel like you can do that? And I just, really want to say, I just hope that we can share our stories. And I think I'll throw it back to like Liz. And my last slide was about, connecting. I do have contact information if you wanted to like, you know, communicate further. But I just really want to thank like Liz and Damon, everybody, and just for doing such an amazing job.
Mary, no need to thank you very much for speaking. That was really fantastic. So thank you for sharing. And the chat's been going quite a lot about people sharing
Oh,
what
yeah,
transplant they've had, how long we've had
I
somebody,
love it.
had someone at 3 months to mid-20s to
Mhm.
35 years. So the chats are filling in, and it's great to see people from all over the world. And there we go, we got a donor mum as well. Fantastic.
Yes.
I know that looking through the faces while I was listening to you as well, there was a lot of nodding heads in every aspect of what you talked about. One thing I think that's generic across the board, whether you're going from child to adult or whenever you have your transplant, it is that feeling when you walk through those hospital doors and just, it's that tiny niggle, hope everything's okay. And of course you do, because transplantation is such a big part of all our lives. So I'm just looking, there's no actual questions at the moment, but I'm looking at Julie Baddock, who I know said she donated a kidney to her son 10 years ago. He's now 13. So she'd be interested to hear how people manage the transition from teen to adult, especially with regards to taking medication. This has been discussed before within our British Transplant Games world, but I have known quite a few juniors who then obviously go on to be adults. Perhaps you could give us your sort of experience of it, and then I might ask Damo for his, and if anyone else who's been in that same position, going from a child to adult, if you just want to put your hand up or just chat it, there we go. But Mary, could you just give us a brief idea of how that was?
And thank you for that question. I think it was Julia, right? Julia that I wanted to, just kind of hone it, or Julie, I apologize. Okay, I apologize for that. Okay, so to answer your question, I mentioned that my dad's family moved in to try to really help with it. It takes a support system, and I literally remembering my aunt just organizing all my medications. It was so much medications, and some of them were so gross. Like I had to drink certain medications, and just her telling me, you have to take these medications. You have to do it at these particular times. And the pill boxes were out of control. But to me, I was a pretty compliant patient. I think part of it was because I think it's various reasons. Maybe that's just in my personality, but I was being told, like, there's no no's here. Like, you have to do it. So, and I think also a big thing is I saw in my family how my health impacted my family. And it was so important for me to just stay the course and just do what I had to do and do what was told of me at that time. And I think when I look back, we were very lucky, my dad and I, to have my aunt stay with us and to have the relatives and all of that just swoop in and help as they can.
The support system was integral to everything. Yeah, and that's, I think that goes across the board with everyone. Damo, when I first met you, I think you were 15, something like that, whizzing around the track in Bath in 2006. And you had your transplant at 5. So how did you manage that whole thing from being looked after to then perhaps wanting to, I don't know, your journey, perhaps you wanted to sort of break away a bit, or were you fed up with the tablets, or was it just a norm? How did you cope day to day with that?
I think I'm being fortunate enough to be brought up in quite a big family. As Liz will know, I've got 4 brothers and 1 sister, and like Mary says, you kind of see the impact it has on the family in terms of and you get told what impacts it's had. So things like the siblings being forgotten about because constantly having hospital appointments, having to be put on dialysis at the right time, especially being at school as well. I had to be put on dialysis at the right time of night so that I could get up in the morning for school. So I think that's what spurred me on to really keep a routine going. So it used to be once I had my transplant, it was getting up, having my tablets, going to school, coming home, doing homework, and then doing my tablets before I go to bed.
So part of normal everyday life, really.
Yeah, it did become a normal everyday thing for me. And it was just sort of something I was like, when I was growing up, I did every now and again get fed up because if I was ill, people would make excuses, and then and then I'm like, oh well, I've got to live with this. Let's just crack on and do
Mm.
life. The thing I found more difficult was the social aspect in life.
Yes.
How people reacted, like Mary mentioned,
Mm.
finding a job wasn't easy. Um, and I was quite lucky that my current employers employed me when they did. Because I'd been on like government schemes, I'd been on like universal credit, which is the benefits we've got over in England.
Mm.
Um, I I basically really struggled because people had that perception that because I'd had a transplant, I'd need a lot of time off for hospital appointments and stuff. So that was sort of the things I found really difficult. I can remember just after I left school, I decided to go to college, get a diploma in sports and fitness coaching. And I remember this particular lesson in particular where we're talking about drinking alcohol. And
Mm.
at the time I didn't drink, whereas the rest of my classmates did.
Mm.
And one of my classmates I actually went to school with, and he turned around and went, "Yeah, but if you have one drink, it'll kill you because of your transplant." And I was like, "Well, that's not necessarily true. I can drink, but it's got to be in moderation."
Well, this links into actually what I was going to ask. Sabrina Sata has asked how to manage children entering adolescence and the social pressures they may have, drinking. There may be drugs around, anything like that, relationships, etc. Um, Personally speaking, I was 19 when I had my transplant, so I was in that very weird category of not being a child, but I definitely wasn't an adult. Probably not an adult now, but and it was a very difficult one. Do I drink? Do I not drink? My surgeon had turned around to me and said, "Yes, you can have Guinness. It's good for you." But we all know about the health effects that if you drink too much, too regularly, then it's going to be they're going to be a problem. So, Mary and Damo, how did you manage your first drinking experience, or do you not drink, or how do you manage it? And Damo, as Damo was saying, some people
Yeah.
have a very different perception of things, think that you're going to die because you're going to have a drink. I can't tell you how many people say to me, "Oh, you're not allowed to drink because you've had a kidney transplant." How do you what would you say to Sabrina about managing children entering that adolescence and the social
Damon, do you want to go ahead? Sorry if I interrupted you, Liz. Damon, do you want to go ahead?
Uh, I'll let you go and get your thoughts
Well,
while I think about an answer.
so I so we have happy hours here. I'm sure like that's
yes.
worldwide, but anyway. So so when I started working, I worked in New York City and I had never touched a drink. I just wasn't interested. I mean, maybe I was interested in like a wine cooler, but that's because I like fruity sweet things because I have such a sweet tooth. And I remember this colleague is like, "Oh, let's go to happy hour and let's have this drink." And I was just very hesitant. And I was just like, is this going to affect my kidney? Like, but what about the social aspect? But I'm working for the first time and here I am in New York City and I need to live my life to the fullest. So needless to say, just to cut to the chase, I did go to happy hours and I would only have like one drink, but I made a mistake and that actually stopped alcohol for me pretty much altogether because it was a holiday party and I mixed drinks. I was just in that zone, like, oh, this is so much fun. I'm living normally. I can like have
That is a
fun. I'm working full time. And
that is
then,
a normal human being, isn't it?
yes,
It's a normal life. We have to try and experience, otherwise we just don't know.
exactly. But I ended up in the emergency room basically for mixing drinks. And my kidney doctor was very upset with me, and my family was very upset with me. And since then, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to get as wild as ginger ale.
Mine is very different. Again, like I'm going to go back to like the social aspect. I was very nervous growing up.
Yeah.
Um, I still sometimes struggle with crowds nowadays.
Mhm.
Um, so my first drinking experience was my 18th birthday,
Um,
um, and I was sat playing football manager with my then brother-in-law.
mhm.
And I think I only had the one. I thought I'll have one just as a celebration, and then I didn't touch anymore until probably I turned 21
Uh-huh.
when I met a few other transplant buddies.
Yeah,
They were like,
exactly.
you
I
know
think
what?
mhm.
They like you only get to live once, twice, maybe three times if you're lucky. Just
Absolutely.
Definitely.
just learn
Mhm.
to
I
live.
think I think, just before I move on to some other bits and pieces, and Sam just put something up about living life to the fullest and thriving in the new normal. Um, it is a new normal. We are, well, I feel, that they're very lucky to have a second chance, but also, I'm not going to hold back, and anybody who knows me, is thinking, yeah, okay, I'm pleased you said that, Liz, because I don't. I do drink, I party, I work hard, I play hard. But over 35 years from the time I've had my transplant, I know where my limits are. I
Yeah.
have pushed them sometimes, and I haven't come off very well with them. And then I think, well, okay, I can't do that. And it's a live and learn experience, but surely that is like any human being. And yes, we do have that added thing of, we've got a transplant and, got to look after it. But there's also that balance of got to live your life as well. It's a very, very fine balance. And I would say to, I can't remember who asked me then, who said about managing adolescence. I would, as a mum of two girls myself, I think it's being as open and honest with your children as possible. There's no point putting down the barriers because they're just going to break through them. But I think just having the conversation and letting them understand that you're listening and you're there for them no matter what is good. I think also being around others who have gone through similar experiences, and I think it's a great honour to go to the games, but it's also a great honour to see the juniors then progress into adults and how they navigate and how they see other older people at the games, or in their transplant community, and their influence then knocks on to the younger people as well. So it's a constant thing. It's very important that the community, the transplant community, to do this.
Yes.
But
Mhm.
I'm just moving on to so I've got some other questions here. There are a couple about Mary. There's one individual one for you. Perhaps you can
Oh,
text Sam. Um,
okay.
yeah, you can text Sam individually. But we've got some here. We've got Jenny. Hi, Jenny. And there was someone back here. I can't remember. Oh, goodness me. Someone else asking about health professionals.
Mhm.
And what's Yes, and Christina's saying, what do medical terms do right sorry, medical teams do right today versus 20, 30 years ago? And then Jenny was asking about how we can get what would be helpful for healthcare professionals to offer the support. I will ask both of you this, Mary and Damo, but I think for me, it comes on the back of what I've just said. It's just making sure there's communication. It's not just a case of having a transplant, moving on, that's it, which I have to say, when I had my transplant 35 years ago, that was the case. No counselling. That's it. Out the door. Go. But um, I've seen the program getting better in the UK over here. And Mary, how did you find your healthcare team then? And what would you say the differences are now?
So when I went from pediatrics to adulthood with the medical team, my pediatric kidney doctor, he actually kept me longer than so at 18, that was it. He kept me till 24. And he said, okay, it's time to set you free. Go loose. Like we gotta, and he gave me recommendations. And I was a very difficult patient. I still am very difficult patient. Well, difficult is in the eye of the beholder because I would ask a lot of questions. Like I said, when I was 12 years old, I was going in with index cards asking questions. And I had this black binder with full of my test results and questions and everything. So I struggled. I struggled a lot to try to find an adult medical team. And the big thing here that I was experiencing when I made that transition was the doctor, the kidney doctor who I feel like I was interviewing her in a way, but she said to me like, "Oh, we need for you to get this and this and this and this test done." And I said, "Why?" Like, because I want to know, like, this is my body. Like, why is it that you want me to undergo this blood test? Why do you want me to undergo this scan or whatever it is? And she didn't like that. A lot of doctors, they don't like questions. They might, well, in my experiences, they've seen it as difficult rather than working together. So I knew like that I had to find a medical team that was about that, was about collaboration. Okay, was about us communicating and collaborating together. And it took me a while. I went to, I don't need to go into all of it. I've been through plenty of doctors, but I can say for now, Liz, to cut to the chase and to answer your question, I have a wonderful transplant team. It's actually my second kidney transplant. I went back to them and they just have a rhythm. Like we just know how it is. 4 times a year, I see them, I get the blood test done, I can review the results, and that is it. And it's really about collaboration. I spend more time with my transplant center going through all of that, but it was a journey. It was an experience and full of experiences. How about for you, Damon? Like, yeah.
Um, so I had the option to go up to adults when I was 16.
Okay.
But then I said, well, I want to go as far as I can in the kids. So they kept me till I was 18.
Mhm.
And then as for my first appointment in adults, my pediatric doctor come with me and basically spoke about my history, what I was doing, um, and what I like to do outside of, at the time, college. Um, but after that, I was left on my own. Me and my parents, we were gone. It was always a case of um, it was always a case of how are you? I'm fine, and then they would just send me on my way. The only time I seen most of them was when I was going through a rejection phase in 2007, just after I got back from the World Transplant Games in Thailand. My
Oh,
results weren't what they expected. Um, so they did like a biopsy and discovered that the rejection was because of the time difference between getting back from Thailand to getting it back into England. So it was just sort of trying to get my medicines right,
Mm.
back to the right time.
of
That
course.
was the issue. Um, but I wish we had the support network that we've got now. So we've got a charity called Kidney Care UK,
Okay.
and they host a young adults weekend every year, which I help and volunteer at. And it's great because I get the opportunity to see not just the impact that I'm helping kidney care achieve, but also I get to see young adults growing up, growing relationships and growing that support network around them. There's a group of young adults that went in 2019, and now that because they're too old to go to the weekend, round about the time the weekend's announced, that weekend they'll maybe book to go to Harry Potter World, or the last year they went to Paris for the weekend. But it's nice that they've got that support network where they
Awesome.
just meet up and just
I think the
socialize
thing that's
together.
I think the thing that's overriding here and seeing some of the chats as well is the support. So in answer to Jenny and my brain's going, honestly, I can't remember who said. So Jenny and the other person who asked about the medical, who's a nurse coming back here. Bear with me. Oh, and Christina. Apologies, Christina. So in response to Christina and Jenny, I think that in years previously, there hadn't been the chats. Perhaps there wasn't a number of transplants. I don't know, but I think people were just left to get on with things, I think, whereas now there's more influence on counselling and bringing people together. And I would say that if you're a transplantee in a unit, and perhaps there is an adolescence unit attached, but a lot in the UK haven't. I know that my hospital hasn't. I would just make sure that you see a younger person come in. I'm always chatting to people anyway, whether they want it or not, and you just introduce yourself, and suddenly that conversation comes. And actually, whether they're in adolescence or not, it's quite nice to just get that support, perhaps in the waiting room, because it can be a bit awful sometimes, but and try and be involved in the groups that you feel comfortable in. So whether it be the Transplant Games or Kidney Care UK, or doing something like Mary's doing, it's just so important to get that togetherness, because I don't think one wants to be defined by your transplant, but in a way I see it a bit of a privilege that have gone through it, because it gives you a new sort of direction of life, but it can be educational to other people, and it's an insight to another part of life. So yeah, I'm just looking back because I really make sure that I'm answering all the questions. If I haven't answered your question and I've skipped through it, could you just send a message in the chat, because I'm trying to multitask. So Sam Day has put his email there. Thank you very much, Sam. That's very kind of you. Oh, and he's put thank you very much. That's no problem. This is what these sessions are for. And I would ask all of you, and you feel free to put it on the chat, or please email WTGF. We want to cover as many topics as possible. Now, whether you think that it's not important what you're thinking about and everything, please send your ideas in. Myself and Damo and Mary have chatted about lots of things today, but there may be something that is this inkling in it's like a little niggle in your mind, thinking, I wish someone would talk about that. I know that all the previous videos on for the women, the pregnancy and adoption are available, and Damo, I know yours about men's health is there as well. I think it's so important for us to do these things together. I think it's very important we do things apart as well, because there are things which are just girly and things which are just boy, and that's fine as well. And I'm just whizzing through here. There's a webinar. Yes, I'm just replying to Anna there, whose son is waiting for a kidney transplant. Fingers crossed. And I can't almost answer what's the best thing. She's asked what's the best thing a mother can do to be for him. Just be you. You're doing an amazing job already. So just carry on being you. And as Kim from WTGF has said, there's going to be a webinar in a couple of weeks, which will assist with this topic. So I'm probably going to sign this off in a minute, because I think we've answered all the questions and no one's nudged me that I haven't done anything.
Can I add something? Oh, yes, I'm sorry, Liz. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I apologize. I just go. There was a comment here I see by Jackin. I'm sorry, I'm saying if I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. If the individual is still on the on here, it says about that kids see it as normal part of their life, especially with siblings on the same path. And making friends was hard, and I wanted to touch upon that because and I would love for Damon to chime in, or anybody else, but because I've been so accustomed to because I dealt with my kidney stuff since I was young, I'm kind of just used to it now. In a way, I think if we're talking about ages and stages or transitions, I think it might be harder everyone's experience is different. But for someone to be healthy their entire life, that's another dynamic. If they're healthy their entire life, and then all of a sudden they're hit with something with their health later on, or even at 19, you mentioned, Liz, like it's very difficult to navigate maybe as we get older. I certainly know 30 years out with my second transplant, there's even more that comes about as we get older with health stuff. So it's definitely you know, just an ongoing pathway. And then Christina also, I think the medical teams, I think what they're, well, at least in the US, what they're doing is, I'm very curious in the UK, but in the US, they have like a financial team, they have a social worker, they have the doctor, they have the PA, they have all these people within the team. And I think that makes it more cohesive to be a part of that transplant unit, or transplant team, or had to have a transplant team. I think that's very helpful.
Thank you, Mary. Thank you. Thank you, Melina. I've thanked you online anyway. Melina has asked if a session can be facilitated for specifically adults with an invite to those currently transitioning through to adult care pitfalls and give peer support. That's lovely. Perhaps we can find somebody. Dama, perhaps we can have a think about somebody. Perhaps we can have a youth wellness. We can think about this.
That's awesome.
Perhaps who would be a good role model to go forward with that. Yes, and we know teenagers don't like fuss, so especially if they've got adults organising it for them. But yeah, so but Melina, thank you. We can definitely do that. Okay.
Yeah, I'm Jacqueline, who you were talking about. I think my kids did really well, but you know, they had their transplants about 8 weeks apart. So they're both in the same routine of taking all the extra medicines. And I remember my son being shocked that one of the neighbor kids only saw their doctor once a year. Like, well, that's weird. Because they were so used to going all the time. But I think the transition for them was hardest when they moved out of the house as adults.
Yes.
Because then they're all by themselves, even though they have a sibling and they have family around, they're all on their own. And I think, I don't want to say it overwhelmed them, but I think it a little more challenging because then they had to negotiate everything on their own.
Yeah.
And a personal thing, when I had when I was ill at 17 and then I had my transplant at 19, 8 weeks later, I started my my music course at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama, and I was suddenly propelled into life at a YMCA by myself with quite a bit of savings because I hadn't been working, and I was in an establishment, although also the practice and the music was hard, partying was hard as well. And you know, little things like I remember I found out that I couldn't drink a certain type of orange squash, my tablets, and being sick and having to go to the payphone and panicking, and because you know I was wondering if my kidney was going to fail because you know, all these sorts of things that you know, they're scary. They're scary, especially when you go out and have to navigate things yourself. I really felt that the presumption was that I'd be all right and just get on with it, which I did, but not, you know, certainly had a few bumps and scrapes along the way. Definitely. Yeah, we do. We have Liz Schick. Hello, Liz, in Switzerland. I just popped on that. Paul Harden specialising in transition. We've got an Oxford unit, and they do a lot of work in transitioning the juniors into adults. It would be nice if we had every unit doing that, but unfortunately it comes down to finance and organisation, everything. But that's what I said, if we can as individuals reach out, and perhaps we can think about doing some youth wellness, that would be fantastic. Does anyone else have any more questions before I wrap things up? I'm looking at the chat and just making sure I haven't got anything. I'm very aware that this is Mary's lunch hour and it's hot, and there might be an ice cream stall that she needs to visit.
I'm going for food first.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna have a sesame bagel. My friend got me a sesame bagel from her time in Montreal, Canada, actually over the weekend.
That sounds really good to me.
Bagels in Montreal are so good.
That's pretty good. Okay, I would like to just thank everybody, but I'd especially like to thank Mary for her time and her fantastic webinar that she's presented. So Mary, thank you. I'm very much looking forward to meeting you in Dresden in Germany, where the World Transplant Games are. I think
Yes.
they'll be streaming there. So anyone who's not going, you can have a look. Damo, my good friend and colleague, Damo, thank you very much. I will see you for a lemonade at the British Transplant Games, which will be very, very soon. It's been lovely to see everybody online. I'm from all over the world because we've had America, we've had South Africa, we've had Switzerland, we've had Slovenia. Oh my goodness, and I've got to guess where I remember where everyone else is. Apologies. Canada, thank you very much. Lovely. I don't think we've got anyone from Australia. I don't think they're probably asleep at the moment, are they? Something like that.
I see Spain and Germany represented.
Spain, Germany, yeah, Europe, that's fantastic. And in the UK, I know everyone's giving up watching Wimbledon to be here as well. So thank you very much, especially as we got somebody in, got a British person playing. Mexico, thank you very much. Mexico, thank you very much. Mexican Spanish, thank you. Now see everybody's now there coming back, so fantastic. Okay, please take care of yourself. Please share this recording when it comes out. Let everyone know about the women's wellness, men's wellness, and as I said, if there's any other subject that you would like us to talk about and have a webinar or a coffee chat, sometimes we have one, please drop myself, Damo, or Kim at WGF a line. As for now, I would like to say thank you and safe journey, safe evening, afternoon, morning, wherever you are. Fantastic. Okay. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you,
Mary.
Take care. Thank you to all, everybody who
Thank
came.
you.
Just press your leave buttons. That's great. Thank you very much, everyone.
Okay.
Thank you, Liz.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.